The Princes in the Tower, the mystery that haunts the crown, a tale of royalty, betrayal, and two boys who vanished forever. In the summer of 1483, two young princes were locked inside the Tower of London. They never came out. No one knows for sure what happened, but their disappearance became one of the darkest mysteries in British history. The young princes. The older boy was just 12 years old. His name was Edward Fee. The younger was his brother Richard, only 9. They were the sons of King Edward IV, royal, playful, innocent, and they were meant to rule. But their father died suddenly, and before young Edward could wear the crown, his uncle arrived. Enter Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard claimed he would protect the boys, that he would prepare Edward to be king, but something felt wrong. Soon, Richard declared the princes illegitimate. He took the crown for himself, and the boys were never seen again. The Tower of Secrets. The Tower of London was not just a fortress. It was a prison, and sometimes a tomb. People whispered. Some said the boys were murdered. Others said they were smuggled away in secret. But the truth, still unknown. Even today, no one is sure what happened. Who did it? Was it Richard III, the uncle who became king? Or was it someone else, a rival or traitor? Centuries of historians have searched for answers. Bones were found, books were written, but the mystery remains. They were just boys, born into crowns and courtrooms, but lost to shadows and time. And now, when the moon shines over the Tower of London, some say you can still hear them. The execution of Anne Boleyn, the queen who lost her crown, and her head. A tale of love, power, betrayal, and one of history's most tragic goodbyes. She was once the most powerful woman in England, crowned queen, beloved and feared. But on a quiet May morning in 1536, Anne Boleyn stepped onto a scaffold and prepared to die. A love that changed the world. Anne Boleyn was no ordinary woman. She was clever, beautiful, ambitious. When she met King Henry VIII, he was already married, but he became obsessed. He wanted Anne, and only Anne, so badly, he left the Catholic Church to divorce his wife. That decision changed history. He created the Church of England, married Anne, and made her queen. The daughter who wasn't a son. But their love began to crumble. Anne gave birth to a girl, Elizabeth. Henry wanted a boy. Years passed. No sons came. And whispers began that Anne was too bold, too outspoken, too dangerous. Then came the accusations. Betrayal and arrest. Anne was arrested, charged with adultery, treason, and even incest with her own brother. The charges were false, but the court was set. The verdict, already written. She was locked in the Tower of London, alone, afraid, and yet dignified. The final morning, on May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn walked to the scaffold. She wore a grey gown. She spoke calmly. She forgave the king. And then, with one stroke of a French sword, her life ended. She was 35 years old, a legacy that lives. Henry would marry 4 more times, but Anne's daughter, the one he once saw as a disappointment, would grow up to become Elizabeth Dare, one of the greatest monarchs in British history. Anne had died in disgrace, but her legacy lived in a golden age. She was a queen, a mother, a fighter, and though she was silenced, her story still speaks. The Great Fire of London, 1666, the night the city burned, a story of destruction, survival, and rebirth. In the year 1666, London was a crowded city of narrow streets, wooden homes, and silent fear. Plague had taken thousands. The summer was hot, and the winds were strong. And then, one spark changed everything. The fire begins. On the night of September 2nd, a small fire started in a bakery on Pudding Lane. It was late. Most people were sleeping, and the fire, like a whisper, began to spread. But by dawn, it was roaring. Wooden houses burned like paper. The wind carried embers from rooftop to rooftop, and the city began to fall. A city in flames. People fled through the smoke-choked streets. Families grabbed what they could, children, blankets, Bibles, and ran as buildings exploded in flames behind them. The fire raged for 4 days. It consumed over 13,000 homes, 87 churches, and even the great St. Paul's Cathedral. But somehow, only a few lives were lost. Still, the damage was unthinkable. London looked like a battlefield. The king's orders. King Charles II rode through the streets, offering comfort and commanding firefighting efforts. Barrels of gunpowder were used to blow up buildings, sacrificing a few to stop the flames from taking all. At last, the fire died. Ashes cooled, smoke faded, and silence returned. A new beginning. Though London was broken, its people were not. Brick by brick, they rebuilt. Wider streets, stone buildings, safer homes, and from the ashes of destruction rose a stronger, brighter London. Sometimes, the greatest tragedies make way for the greatest rebirths. The fire took nearly everything, but it could not take hope or courage or the spirit of a city that refused to fall. The life of Queen Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen who ruled alone, a story of survival, strength, and a woman who chose the crown over love. She was born into danger, surrounded by power, betrayal, and death. She should never have been queen. She should never have survived, but she did. And when she took the throne, she ruled for 44 years. This is the story of Elizabeth V, the daughter of a disgraced queen, and the last ruler of the Tudor dynasty. A childhood of shadows. Elizabeth was born in 1533. Her father was King Henry VIII. Her mother was Anne Boleyn, the queen who would be executed when Elizabeth was just 2 years old. Elizabeth was declared illegitimate, banished from court, raised in the shadows of the palace. But even as a child, she was clever, sharp, watching everything. She learned Latin, Greek, French, politics. She read endlessly, and she learned what it meant to survive. A dangerous throne. After the death of her half-sister, Queen Mary the Finn, Elizabeth became queen in 1558. England was divided. Protestants and Catholics were at odds. Spain and France were watching, and many believed a woman could not rule alone. But Elizabeth had other plans. She surrounded herself with brilliant advisors. She studied every threat. She spoke with clarity, charm, and force. She led not with fear, but with strategy. The queen who would not marry. Many kings and nobles asked for Elizabeth's hand, but she refused them all. "I'm married to England," she said. She wore her virginity as a symbol of loyalty to her people. She had favorites, like Robert Dudley, but no husband, no children, no king beside her throne. She ruled alone. The Spanish Armada. In 1588, her greatest test came. Spain, the most powerful empire in the world, sent an enormous fleet, the Armada, to conquer England and dethrone Elizabeth. But the queen did not hide. She rode on horseback to meet her troops in armor. She spoke like a warrior. "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king." England's navy, small but skilled, defeated the mighty Armada. The storm helped too, and Elizabeth's legend only grew. The Golden Age. Under Elizabeth, England flourished. Shakespeare wrote his greatest plays. Explorers sailed to the Americas. Trade, art, and science grew, and the people called it the Elizabethan Age. She became more than a queen. She became a symbol of grace, strength, and independence. The final years. She ruled until she was 69 years old, ancient by Tudor standards. She died quietly in 1603, without naming an heir. But her people mourned. They had known no other queen, and no other would ever rule quite like her. She ruled with no husband, no heirs, no crown beside her own. She led with wisdom, survived betrayal, and left behind a golden age. Elizabeth, the queen who stood alone and made the world bow to her light. The story of Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. A tale of light, compassion, and a woman who changed the world from the shadows. In a time of war, in a place filled with blood, screams, and silence, one woman walked the halls at night with a single lamp, and wherever she went, hope followed. This is the story of Florence Nightingale, The woman who became a legend, not by fighting, but by healing. A quiet rebellion, Florence was born in 1820 into a rich English family. She had everything: education, wealth, comfort, but she wanted something different. She felt called to care for others, to serve, to heal. When she told her family she wanted to become a nurse, they were horrified. At that time, nurses weren't respected. Hospitals were dirty and dangerous, a place for the poor, not for women like Florence. But she didn't listen. The Crimean War. In 1853, Britain went to war with Russia in a place called Crimea. Thousands of British soldiers were wounded, but the hospitals were worse than the battlefield. There was no clean water, no medicine, no light, just pain. Florence Nightingale went anyway. She brought 38 nurses and headed straight into the horror. The lady with the lamp. She worked non-stop, day and night, cleaning floors, bandaging wounds, holding dying men's hands so they didn't pass alone. At night, she walked the dark hospital halls with her lamp, checking on every single patient. The soldiers called her the lady with the lamp. A legacy of light. Florence didn't stop when the war ended. She returned home and started fighting a new kind of war. Against disease, poor hospital conditions, and ignorance. She wrote books, founded nursing schools, and made nursing a profession of honor. Even Queen Victoria praised her. She never wore armor. She never carried a sword. But she saved more lives than many who did. Florence Nightingale showed the world that light can shine, even in the darkest halls.